Welcome to the Atomic Impact Podcast. I am your host, Jason Osborn, and on this podcast, we interview successful business owners for them to share atomic and impactful lessons that they've learned throughout their business career, and we can learn from them as well. As always, this show is sponsored by the reverse podcast method, the new way to close deals that doesn't rely on any of the old traditional methods that everybody hates. We use this method to book 26 qualified leads and sales calls in 10 days without any ad spend, outreach, or endless social media posting. Find out more, direct message me on LinkedIn to have a chat. That's Jason A. Osborn, and the link to that will be in the show notes below. But on today's show, our guest is Ed Morrison. He is the founder of Strategic Doing Institute, where they exist to transfer the essential skills of ecosystem design and orchestration to the leaders who will guide them. So, Ed, welcome to the show, man. And I want to start off with asking you the same question I always love asking people at the beginning, and that is this. If you were somehow able to go back in time to when you started your very first business, what's the number one piece of advice that you would give yourself?
Yeah, I think the number one piece of advice would be to start small with simple exercises, simple ways of testing your ideas out. We all start an enterprise with a big idea, but the real knowledge comes from doing small steps. And there's a little bit of a paradox there, but you actually learn something and you manage the risk much better. And I think if I had to do it all over again, I would manage my risk a lot more effectively.
Okay, interesting. So go into that a little bit more details, because it sounds like there's a story behind that. How did you manage your risk? What you feel maybe incorrectly, and what did you
Mhm.
learn to manage your risk better?
Well, it's the basis of what we're doing with strategic doing. I mean, I grew up in an environment where strategic planning was the big idea. You developed a big business plan, you developed the strategy, and it was all analytically very logical. And then you went out and developed a bunch of money, or you recruited investors for financing. And I think what I learned best was one, don't overpromise. Don't overpromise. Two, to focus on small experiments and to do manage risk very simply. So one of the adventures I was involved with, the investors had a very good suggestion for me. When I came back from my first meeting after they had invested in my project, um, I pulled out the business plan and they essentially said, well, wait a second, don't go through the business plan. What we want to know is how are you going to run to daylight? And what they were telling me was essentially that the business plan was important to understand what the logic of the business could be. But the real
Mm,
experience comes from running experiments. And so managing your risk involves running small experiments. And in strategic doing, we call these Pathfinder projects, and we put a time constraint on them. We say at most 6 months, at most 180 days. Some of them are 30 days long, some are 60 days, 90 days. They're all testing your ideas, testing your hypotheses about what might work to create value.
mm,
So what I learned was instead of coming up with a big plan and following a big plan was yeah, come up with the idea, of course, get people excited, but the real reality, the rubber hits the road when you start doing things and managing risk through those step
mm.
processes. So it's a new habit of strategy.
When you talk about new habit of strategy, you talk about these experiments.
Hmm.
What I hear a lot from that, because this is something that I live a lot by, is you want to test a lot. And I always use the phrase you want to just fail as fast as you can, as often as you can, which is that experimental stage,
Mhm.
but not have the
Mhm.
emotions tied into that. And I love your feedback on that, because I feel like that's what you're saying in a lot of ways. And but I love your approach on it. Whether we use it as experiments or different terms, it's that let's test these ideas, not just say it has to be this one. And I think the biggest thing I'd love for you to develop in on this, Ed, because I think you have a lot to say for this just by what you're saying, is how do business owners or leaders of a business be able to take the emotion out of what they're doing so that they don't try to force something because they want it to be a certain way when actually the experiment or the market's telling them something different.
Right. Well, first of all, we have to step back and recognize that when we're trying to create value, new value, we're trying to create that through collaboration within our company and collaboration with our customers, collaboration with our suppliers. So these are new systems, new human systems that you're building. And the truth of the matter is, you don't know what's going to work. I mean, you can go as best you can with a pitch deck and tell people this is how this is all going to work out, but the
Yeah.
truth is, you don't know. You have a good hypothesis or a good set of hypotheses, a good set of ideas that people are willing to invest in. But you have to generate new knowledge, generate new insights and understanding, and that only happens in when you actually do something, when you actually plan a what we call a Pathfinder project or a project that's to test your thinking. And if you see it as a continuous journey of experimentation and inquiry, or experimentation and investigation, you see it as a process of learning, and that's really what it is. It's a process of learning together with your partners inside your company, and also with
Mm,
your collaborators outside the what we call the ecosystem around your company.
mm,
So you have to see this as a learning journey, and when you do that, you tend to take the drama out of it. You tend to be more open to discovery. You tend to take down the mask that you are the leader and you have the answers, because you don't have the answers. The truth of the matter is you don't have the answers because you're doing something entirely new, something that's never been done before. You're creating a new type of business, and that's exciting. That's an exciting prospect. So if you
mm.
reframe what you're doing, it turns into a collaboration, a learning exercise, an experimentation, and it's exciting. It's fun to
Yeah.
see what happens when your ideas come to life.
Yeah, I love that. Oh, so much wisdom and meat in what you've just said there, Ed. We could dive into this so much deeper. I'd like to ask a little bit of a different question because I'm really curious now. Um, One of the things that I like asking oftentimes on this podcast is the challenges you've had in your business, because we all go through them, and sometimes I think we think we're the only ones that are going through a particular challenge. So, what's one of the biggest challenges you faced running your business, and what's the lesson that you learned from that?
Yeah, so any new endeavor, any new effort, really, and you've heard about red ocean and blue ocean strategies. So let's talk about the blue ocean for a minute. The idea that you're creating something new is exciting, but you are disrupting existing relationships. You're not operating on a plain white sheet of paper. There are existing ideas, existing routines, existing arrangements, existing power structures that you're disrupting with a new idea. And the problem that we run into is I think, at least I did, was one, felt like I had to convince everybody that I was right. And the answer is no, you don't have to convince everybody that's right, because what you're really looking for is a core team that you can start with, a core team. And if your core team really believes in the vision or the direction you're going, your core team will support you as you go forward. So part of the lesson I learned was, one, I don't have to convince everybody. Two, it will be disruptive, so that if I'm successful, actually, it may trigger an immune response from the existing organizations out there. A scholar long time ago, um, Donald Schoen, called this dynamic conservatism. In other words, the existing structure doesn't want to change. So if you're disrupting something, if you're doing something disruptive, it will provoke some response, but you don't have to respond to the immune response. You can keep
Mm,
going, keep focused on where you're going. And I think that's the lesson I learned, and the importance of a team. We think of leadership too much as a singular, one person as the leader.
yeah.
That doesn't really work in complex environments. In complex environments, nobody has the answer. No one person is everybody has something to add to the leadership. So no one person is going to, it's not the heroic single leader model that's going to pull us through complexity, because if we knew how to solve the problem, we would just solve the problem. So if a leader knew how to solve the problem, they'd just go ahead and solve it, get it
Yeah.
done. So problems in our businesses that are like that, where you have a routine, you know what to do. Yeah, a single leader works in that environment. But when we're talking about creating new value in an entrepreneurial environment with a dancing landscape of change, you don't really know. And the leader's job is to create the space in which the collaborations can tackle these challenges and come up with new
Mm,
solutions. So it's a different way of leading when you're leading in a situation where you don't know what to do. You don't have the answer. There is no routine. There's no book on, there's no book you can look at that'll give you the answer. So
mm,
that's kind of, I think, the big difference for me was understanding that the single leader approach, where I know everything and I'm the inspiring leader, doesn't really work in complexity. When I step down, become a bit more humble, focus on learning and listening, then I become much more effective as a
mm.
guide. And the other aspect of this is you always need a team. When you're dealing with complexity, you always need a team.
Yeah.
Don't try to do the complex on your own. You'll burn out. Won't work.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Oh man, thank you. I love how much detail you've gone into that. It's a lot of great information in there, what you've just shared. Um,
Mm,
Looking at what you are doing right now, what are your
mm.
goals with the Institute over the next 2 to 3 years?
Yeah, so what we did, I'll give you a brief rundown of how strategic doing emerged. I was a corporate strategy consultant, then an entrepreneur, running my own business. Again, I had these strategic planning models. I learned in the early 90s that these things really didn't work in complex environments. So I started working on another approach to strategy and complexity, and that was strategic doing. By 2005, 20 years ago, I had a model in my head. And I went to Purdue University to learn how to validate it, make sure that it worked, and then learn how to teach it. And so that's what strategic doing is. It's a spin out from Purdue University. And my agreement with Purdue was if this is successful, we'll open source the discipline. In other words, we'll tell people what we're doing and share the research. And
Mm,
so 2016, we started at this Strategic Doing Institute about 10 years ago. We were always in the spirit of a garage inventor or a garage entrepreneur. We've never gone out and got a ton of money or any of that. We've always focused on moving forward. And now we have a global network of strategic doing practitioners, people all over the world who are using this to solve complex challenges. And the paradox is that in complexity, you have to follow simple rules. You just follow
mm,
simple rules. And these simple rules that we've embedded in strategic doing came out of 30 years of practice on dealing with complexity. And it's deceptively simple. It's not easy. It takes practice like any
yeah,
discipline, it takes practice to master it.
yeah.
But when you do some pretty amazing, pretty amazing things with it. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But you said something key there. I think is something I think everyone needs to take away from it is the complexity often is built on simplicity of things, which there is a paradox in there for sure. Well, Ed, for people that are wanting to learn a little bit more about what you do and the institute, what's the best place for people to get in contact with you?
Well, at the Institute, Ed at strategicdoing.net is a great place. We have a book called Strategic Doing that gives you the history of our 15 year journey at Purdue, sort of introduces you to the skills that you need to learn to be good at this. And then strategicdoing.net, we're going to be launching a new website in the next month or so. We're excited about that because we have this global network of practitioners. So watch out for strategicdoing.net and join me on LinkedIn. That's the place where I've been posting things about what we're doing. Yeah.
Amazing. Amazing. Well, definitely, I recommend everyone to check out Ed and the Strategic Doing Institute. Ed, thank you so much for being on the show. It's been a pleasure. And a reminder to everyone listening, the show is sponsored by the reverse podcast method, the new way to close deals that doesn't rely on any of the old traditional methods that everyone hates. To find out more, direct message me on LinkedIn to have a chat. That's Jason A. Osborn on LinkedIn. And the link to that will be in the show notes below. And until next episode, stay inspired.